Hi everyone, this is DuoQueue, and today we're doing Where We Stand. This is where we talk about the games we play and how we feel about them. Today we're going to talk about Halo 3 and our experiences. This is Deion, and that's Daryl. Let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about the first mission, which was very strong. It leaves a really good impression. What do you think about that mission, Daryl?
Okay, yeah, the mission in particular that we're talking about is Sierra, I believe it's pronounced, 117. I really enjoyed the way everything kicked off. You know, Chief lands on Earth, and, well, not Earth, it's not really Earth. I don't remember where he lands specifically off the top of my head. But he lands, Johnson's checking on him like, oh, he's dead. And then Chief's like, nope, not dead yet. And then the Arbiter shows up, and that's where Chief and the Arbiter meet again after a while. The last time they met, sort of kind of under awkward circumstances, was in Halo 2.
Mm-hmm.
Hentai tentacles. After that, shortly, the mission begins, and something I noticed immediately is that, first of all, we played this as part of the Master Chief Collection, but it wasn't. Halo 1 and Halo 2 had remastered graphics, or at least remade graphics, I should say. Halo 3 did not, but even for what it was, the lighting was spot on and it was spectacular. I just love good lighting. Besides that, though, the missions, or at least the first mission, was more on the linear side, but because it was linear, they had more, can I say, cinematic moments where they had things happening as you're approaching it and whatnot. And I think the previous Halos had that too, but it just wasn't as obvious.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I really agree. I thought the first mission definitely strong impression because of the cinematics of it, like how it felt. You know, things happen. I think you had like the flight come in, and it was really cool. And then you had the pause. And then the enemy placement was also very good. I thought, like, you know, you came to different sections, and I thought where they placed the enemies was good. The snipers there at certain points in that level. I think you get a sniper in that level. You get a hammer for the first time. So it was super. I really liked that first level.
Yeah, I really liked how, even with that first level, typically. I can't quite remember it with the first two Halo games. My memory gets spotty after a while with everything that we're playing. But I don't think there was as much consistency in the first two Halos as there is in Halo 3. Like, what you play with typically the first mission in a game is the mission that you want to wow people. You want it to, kick things off with a bang and whatnot. But Halo 3 kind of just takes that energy and just consistently keeps up with it.
I agree.
Throughout the entire game, the levels are much more evolved, and and that kind of shines more in the linear levels with large playrooms rather than the open spaces that we got in, like, say, Halo 1, where you kind of had to make your own, pace. This game kind of says, nope, we don't care if you're ready or not. Get moving. You have a war to finish, man.
Right, but I think it's even, right? Like, it's not too much. It's really guiding you. It's just enough. And I feel like Halo 1 kind of just left you out to dry a little bit, where Halo 3 pushed you a little bit. And maybe at the time of the game, you know, when the game came out, that's kind of how things were designed. But I just felt that it pushed you just the right amount. And then and as we talk about these levels, the variance in the levels, right? Like, you know, you start off, you get this desert level. That was super cool. You get your corridors, you get there's like this underground level where the underground's very corridor heavy level. So there's a big variance in the levels, but I would say they're mostly all pretty good. There's not really a level that's just like, I don't want to deal with that throughout the whole thing. So I liked it.
Yeah, they all had their own form of spectacle that you saw in the distance and whatnot. There were no real, how I put it, dead skies where there wasn't really much going on. There was almost always something happening, and when something wasn't happening, that's when you need to be scared, because that's when the flood's coming.
Right. And what I will say, on the weakness side of this, being more straightforward as it is, because it's definitely more straightforward than Halo 1 and 2, it can also be a negative for some people, right? Because this is where you're going, and it's not as you can pick a place. But I like it more, but I know that for some people that could definitely be a weakness if you're looking for that open environment that you got in Halo 1. And the worlds are open, they're just not as just go where you want. You have to figure it out kind of way that it was in Halo 1.
Yeah. Speaking of which, in comparison to Halo 1 and 2, we could talk for a moment about the story, at least in the general sense. Now, Halo 2, as we mentioned before, ended on a cliffhanger, which it was a pretty abrupt cliffhanger that didn't really feel good to hit necessarily. Everything leading up to it was great, but once you hit that cliffhanger, it's like they didn't give you any more to really hold on to. It just kind of ended. This game, it picks up immediately where that left off, and the stakes could never be higher. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're going to be spoiling stuff in this video, so if you don't want spoilers, then you're watching the wrong video. There are characters within these Halo games that I've come to really enjoy. I like Keyes, I like Johnson, and I like the Arbiter and whatnot. I don't know how to feel about the little orb. I keep calling him Oracle, but I forget what he actually is. I just call him what the Arbiters would call him. In the moments when you lost like Keyes and Johnson and whatnot, you felt it earlier, but it was only with their deaths that you really felt like, shit, this is happening. Like how quick, like just how quickly things could kind of like go left or go right. And actually, before I go into more detail about that, in general, what you're trying to do in this game is get back to Cortana, or get Cortana back. She's currently corrupted, if that's the right way to put it. Occasionally throughout the game, you'll get flashes and I'd say visions of whatnot of Cortana talking to you and whatnot. If you play Borderlands 2, if you remember how I can't remember her name, but the woman who talks to you in Borderlands 2, how she occasionally comes up and takes up the whole screen and whatnot to talk to you. That's essentially what happens in Halo 3. The stakes just couldn't be higher with that. Like, it made me actually care more about these characters than I thought I would. And I already liked Johnson, and I liked Keyes' can-do attitude and whatnot. So when I lost them later, I was like, okay, I felt that.
Yeah, like, oh dang, and then it's actually happening.
Yeah,
and the series is ending, right? Like, that's how it felt as well. I think in a little bit.
The last line that Chief has in there is I think it's "Wake me when you need me," and like there he goes again with the badass one-liners.
And gone.
Yep. Handed over to a different development studio.
I definitely want to talk about the Cortana thing a little bit, because you see that in different games, and I'm always wishy-washy with this, but I felt they did it pretty well, like how she comes up. I mean, the first time you're going through this is not annoying, obviously, because you're just like, oh, I'm listening to this and look at the Cortana speak. Cortana has grew on us over the years, right, or over our playthrough, Halo 1, 2, and 3. She's definitely grown on us. So hearing her and listening to what she has to say, I think it's strong. And then even when you get to the mission, the 9th mission, when you're actually getting closer to Cortana, and you go through the glorious buttholes.
Yes,
you can
the
find
butthole doors.
You start getting them a lot faster because you're getting closer. So I love how they kind of played that up. I think it just adds to the suspense there, and a very strong way to do things.
Speaking of which, the main enemy in this game it's technically everybody, with the exception of the Covenant, I believe, if I remember correctly. You mostly fight the brutes, and then towards the end, you fight the Flood. You're just fighting everybody. Everybody's fighting each other.
No, it's pretty good. I like it.
And what better way to dispatch your enemies than with a variety of weapons? Dual wielding comes back with more weapons to satisfy both of your hands. That didn't sound right. I particularly liked the addition of the brute weapons. I liked the nade shot. I always liked the nade shot. They had a brute pistol of some sort. That one felt it's divisive. I love the way it looks, but I don't like the way it fires. It feels like I'm just firing beams of sharp light into somebody, and then nothing else really happens.
Is that the one that's like a machine gun?
Yeah.
That you can hold in 2 hands?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, I love that one. I like the spikes.
It felt like a weaker needle gun. That's how it felt. That's how it felt to me. It looks cool. It's just that it has the same problem to me as the assault rifle. They both look cool, but when you shoot enemies with them, it's like when the brute is charging at you. The nade shot will at least kill them in 2 shots, if not make them stagger maybe once. But that gun is like, I'm just peppering you until you drop. Hopefully.
Right. I know. I agree with you. It definitely isn't a strong weapon. If you carry 2 of them, it's pretty good. But it's definitely not. It doesn't feel super strong. It definitely feels like a weaker needle. But
Yeah.
I will say that I do like that they at least came up with brute weapons versus
Yeah.
in Halo 2 where they just changed the color of the Covenant weapons,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
like, eh. But this one was like, oh, there's new weapons and they're brute weapons. Oh, that makes sense. That makes way more sense.
You had a much larger arsenal of weapons to work with in this
you have
game.
the little shotguns. I like the brute shotguns, and you know I love my shotguns, and the brute shotgun was also decent. So, you know, I like that they did that. That's definitely a big step up to me, and I think it's great. I wish it wasn't Halo 2 though, because you kind of feel like, oh, well, why didn't they have that? Didn't have that in Halo 2? That doesn't make sense. But you know, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal, and adding the weapons was great feeling.
Yeah, and on top of that, the brutes also felt I don't know if I can say better necessarily, but they felt more manageable in this game. I think you had some opinions on that.
Yeah, I felt the brutes. I think the brutes were a huge improvement, to be honest. I hated fighting them in Halo 2. I don't hate them in this game. So that is a huge improvement to me. I thought they were, especially since they're the main enemies now, you're not fighting the Covenant at all anymore. It's good to have the brutes there as a much more fun enemy to fight. Like they have the shields. They have they don't run at you and charge you like crazy, where you're like upset with them.
Not as often,
because,
at
like,
least.
doesn't make sense. So they're not annoying characters. I think they're just fun to fight, and I enjoy that a lot more than what they did with Halo 2.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess for me, they still felt like a little bit of a pain, but then again, they're just beefy, and of course they're beefy, they're brutes. So ultimately, it was having the more weapons to deal with them and whatnot, like the Nation stuff. That helped.
Yep.
That helped a lot. So I could agree with that.
And the hammer was awesome. That's all I can say about the hammer.
It was indeed hammer time.
So let's talk about, you know, Arbiter's role, because Arbiter's role is interesting. That we kind of came up to this on our outline. You know, Arbiter, he was more involved in this game technically, right? Because if you're playing co-op, he's their second player. We played co-op through all the way through, so I saw a lot of Arbiter. But I mean, if you think about it, was his role really bigger than in Halo 2?
Not really. Like, Halo 2 was definitely Arbiter's game. Because it's all about him realizing that, you know, he's essentially in a cult of people I want to say creatures, but no, of people who praise the technology of old, pretty much, and worship the Halos. I think that was I think that's how it went.
Well, something like that,
more or less. But in this game, he's kind of just, he's there to help Chief, and a lot of his stuff isn't directly related. Well, it's kind of related to Chief. It's related in the sense of they are both kind of doing their own thing for a while, and then they converge, if that's the word for it, somewhere, and then they, you know, it's constantly they're constantly helping each other directly and indirectly. So his role doesn't really feel as prominent because now this is Chief's game, his fight to end and whatnot. I remember in the end of the game, he when you have to fight again, I forget the name of the Oracle, what it's actually called, but I'm just gonna call it the Oracle because that's what I remember from 2. There's a point at the end of the game where the Oracle betrays you again, and and of course he betrays you again, and you have to fight him. This is shortly after he shoots Johnson, unfortunately. He shoots Johnson, and then Chief is like, "Oh no, I have to fight this guy." And then a few seconds later, you know, Arbiter walks in like, "What the heck is going on here?" And then he just shoots Arbiter too. Arbiter doesn't die; he just gets knocked out, and you don't see him for the rest of the scene until him and Chief are running away. I'm like, I feel like Arbiter might have had more of a thing to do there than that, but okay, it's just Chief and the Oracle at that point.
Hey, I mean, Master Chief was selling the game. I don't know about Arbiter, but
that's true.
It is what it is. I will, you know, we kind of hinted at this before on the levels, but the game in general felt like a shorter experience. I don't know if it truly was. I don't know if it was a little bit shorter, but it felt like it. And I think what really keyed into that was the levels felt shorter in general. I think there was a few longer ones, but mostly you don't have the snowy level of Halo 1 where you're repeating everything, and that's super long, and you don't have that experience. And Halo 2 had some levels, but they were all long, I felt. Halo 3 levels were, I felt like wrapped correctly. Like they're not
Yeah.
overly long where you got bored at some point. It felt like a full experience, but it was definitely, I would say, a negative, as it felt shorter. It felt like a shorter experience than previous Halos. So
Yeah.
some people are not gonna like that, and that's fair.
Yeah, I think that having a shorter experience overall for this kind of game works in its favor, because the last thing you need is for this kind of thing to drag out for 20 hours. That's not going to happen. I say 20 hours as an exaggeration. The game is only like 7 or 8 hours, but still, if you were to double it, to like 14 or 16 hours, then then that's just not a good idea for this kind of game, because the way it's set up is you have a lot that's going on in each level and whatnot, and you can really only keep up that pace for so long. Even if you fill something with a bunch of action, that action is going to get boring eventually. That's one of the reasons that I believe that you had a bunch of setting changes outside of just story reasons, because eventually being in the same setting would be boring. So you're always on the move, and that works in its favor. Any longer than this, and it probably would have gotten stale. So the short experience helps a lot.
Could agree. Well, let's talk a little bit about vehicles. Vehicles is always a sore spot for you in Halo.
Yes. I love the flying ones.
I think this still stays. Pretty much it's the same thing. I know we have to talk about the Warthog. We haven't had one Halo video where we haven't talked about the Warthog. So, the Warthog is more or less the same. I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie. I like the Warthog and its weird mechanics, but I mean, tell us about the Warthog, Daryl. Tell us about the Warthog.
Simple. I don't like the Warthog. The Warthog, again, I'm going to be treading familiar ground here for anybody who's seen the earlier videos, but the Warthog is too doggone bouncy for me. And I don't mind it as a vehicle. I don't mind it aesthetically. I think it's an awesome vehicle in what it tries to accomplish. But when I'm trying to drive around, and again, I'm on mouse and keyboard, not controller, so that could, that you might want to take that into consideration, but it's not easy for me to drive in that thing, especially when I'm trying to get away, like in the last mission of the game, where we literally fell off the ledge several times, not even trying to go. We saw the hole. You're driving in the Warthog, and you see a hole that blows up. Well, the ground blows up and leaves a hole, and you're like, okay, I need to turn and get away from that. So, but of course, you're going over ramps and hills. So when you go over a ramp or hill before that, and then you land, and you're like, okay, it's cool. I'm only like 5-8 feet away from that hole. No, your Warthog's too busy bouncing, like boing, 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 and then you fall through. And I'm like, what? I get the realism. Don't get me wrong. I get the realism of having a vehicle that, if you were to drive realistically off of something and then land, but not land hard enough to destroy your vehicle, I'm sure there'd be a little bit of a bounce to it, like a oof. But the fact that you go oof, oof, oof.
Oh no, it's more like a trampoline for sure,
Yes.
a bouncy ball. It's 100% definitely extreme.
In fact, compared to the Warthog, I much prefer the chopper, because my first experience with it was I was driving in a not a Banshee. Was it a Ghost? I think that's what it is. I was driving in a Ghost, and there was an enemy with a chopper, and I'm like, okay, well, you want to ram me head on, bring it on. And then I think you told me at the last minute that, oh wait, don't ram into them, because ramming into a chopper will kill you. I'm like, what? And then it kills me. I didn't know that. But driving those was a lot of fun. Heck, driving the choppers, driving the Ghosts, driving the Banshees, driving the new air vehicle in this game, the I forget what you call it.
Falcon.
The Falcon. Driving that, those are all awesome. I just can't get behind the Warthog, and that's kind of the main thing in Halo. I'm not looking forward to driving the Warthog again in Infinite whenever that decides to drop.
Well, we've talked, you kind of mentioned it, but let's talk about the vehicles. I felt this game really pushed the vehicles more. The chopper, which was new, obviously the Falcon, which we've seen, I believe, but actually flying it and being in it, being able to board it, like I thought it was cool. There was more tanks in this game. I feel like I rode a tank at least 4 times. Yeah. Which was not the same in all the other Halos. So I really think they did a strong thing by incorporating more vehicles to to kind of change it up a little bit. And I felt they did a great job of pushing those in there at the right times.
You're right.
So very happy with the vehicles. And it felt, you felt powerful when you had the vehicles up. Tank. Well, a Scorpion tank, man. It was awesome. Definitely awesome.
And now we're going to wrap this up with our final thoughts. My first final thought is screw the snipers. Because we were stuck. Well, maybe not Deion, but I was definitely stuck when we were playing together. But he's better at these kinds of games than I am. So he typically has a habit of he does 2 shots and then kills an enemy and then he keeps going. We were playing on heroic. For me, it's like, okay, I can definitely snipe. I'm good, but the snipers are just faster than me, so they just killed me and kept me back several times, and it was very annoying. So I don't like the snipers, and I am, according to what I googled not too long ago, not a lot of people do. They feel cheap sometimes. They're just like, here's a headshot, dead. Oh, speaking of which, in Halo 3, unlike Halo 1 and 2, your camera doesn't go to the other player when you die. It kind of just sits on you, and you can rotate it around you, but you can't see what the other player is doing, which I'm conflicted about, because on the one hand, I want to see what's going on with Deion, but at the same time, I don't like not having control over the camera. So
I know, it's weird, because why can't I just go to the other character and rotate the camera? That's what I want.
Yes.
Instead,
go ahead.
And I said instead they went back. They changed it, but then they made you look at your own body instead of the other person. I'm like, oh my god, why is this a thing? They can't get the def camera right.
I'm just sitting here rotating the camera, and all I'm seeing is Arbiter's butt, and I'm like, he kind of thick though. I'm not gonna lie. Oh boy.
So my final thoughts of the game. I just want to highlight the co-op experience. We played it co-op. I think once again the game is very strong co-op. I recommend playing through with a friend, listening to the story, but also just having the experience, fun times, watching your friends suck at drawing the Warthog. Always fun. Yeah. And doing, especially the final mission, it's a good experience with another person. So I just highlighting again, co-op definitely worth it. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close. So I would like to say, everyone, don't forget to like or comment. This is DuoQueue. Thanks for queuing with us, and this is where we stood on Halo 3. Thanks, everyone.